Well, here we are. Happy Markcast Monday, coming off the Grey Cup Playoff Semifinals here. A little later in the day, working around Evan. One of our co-hosts had a doctor's appointment, working around his schedule, and then Evan stuck in traffic getting back. But that'll be good. We'll vamp a little bit. Evan can hop on. I have a CFL plus rant that I think we'll wait to get into with Evan because I'm sure he has some thoughts as well. But doing this here, we'll kind of recap obviously the games over the weekend, and then we'll preview everything, depending on XFL news or not this week. This might be the podcast for the week. So we'll see. It was like last week. I'm like, do I bring on Dave Naylor to preview what we've already previewed? Too many previews. So Jason, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing good, Reed. Thanks for having me as always, and definitely got my football fix this weekend with some great games in the NFL. And my teams didn't do so well, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I posted in the group chat the Drake meme, getting up at 9 or whatever to do the Markcast live stream is like, no, but yeah, I was up at 6:30 watching the Dolphins and Chiefs game. Dorothy came down and she's like, what are you doing here? What is going on? So all of that, yeah, very exciting all the way through, coming off of a Portugal the Man show last night. We have Kiss tonight in town, the final goodbye tour for that. So hopefully, luckily we're doing the show now and not after that. My voice we'll hold up here. Real quick, couple notes off the back. Jason's waiting to hear back. Did hear our credential for myself, and I assume Dorothy's email came in as well here. Credentialed third year in a row here covering the Grey Cup. Really appreciate that. I feel privileged and honored. I spelled it with OU because we're Canadian, doing all of that stuff. But really excited. We're going to have a really good show. We either have a location we mentioned at the end of the podcast last week, but it's either going to be at the Anchor Bar there by the convention center, or else working to see if we can get in the kind of the Grey Cup, the fan access, kind of all that stuff. But either way, we'll be there. Jason will be there, Evan, and then the names days. Farhan and Naylor, I'm sure will stop by. We got the Daryl Davis of the world. I know Jamie Nye wants to come on. Jeff Hamilton, if he's around. So we'll get all the kind of Tim Baines will be there. Jason, are you excited for the Grey Cup live show here coming up in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it for a long time now, and I'm really excited for all the guests that we'll have on, and just to do it in person will be really cool.
Yeah, it should be a good vibe. So we'll post all that stuff. You can stop by, obviously, or watch. And we got really good viewership last year, so hopefully we'll kind of do that as well. But anyway, moving on here. Let me see. We got a couple comments, like I said, vamping a little bit today, and then we'll get in Evan and everything else. James, can't wait for the East West Finals. Winnipeg, BC, if I could speak, is going to be game of the year, and Montreal is going to upset got a little curse word there. Didn't see that. And then Kyle is excited. Kyle's a big Montreal Alouettes fan. Jason, we'll do a further deep dive here, but Ticats peaking at the right time. How would you grade the Ticat season now, all said and done?
Well, it's definitely a failing grade, I think, because, they changed so many players in the offseason. I mean, they said, the players are the problem. They changed all these players in the offseason, made all these personnel decisions, and yet they ended up with the exact same record in the exact same situation, losing to Montreal in the East semifinal, and it didn't really look close, just like last year.
I will say, and we had a couple weeks ago with the Dinwiddie playing Chad Kelly, and do we need to play Chad Kelly? And is that coaching malpractice to see Chad Kelly here in the game? I think it was coaching malpractice to say Bo Levi Mitchell till 6 minutes left. And the thing, I guess we can talk about that. Benjamin said the comment here already. I tweeted out, and I was kind of surprised because it was one of those things where I got home. I was watching the BC Lions game on my phone. We were getting ready for the Kraken game. I had it on, and then went to the game. And then I, came back after. Saw the comments on, and I guess I'll present my little tweet, and then I want to get Jason's thoughts as well. Bo saying, if you're not paying your highest paid player on the team in the player front, I don't see myself being here again, Bo Levi. And I just said, I appreciate his honesty. I think this is a huge story. So much of the offseason was built on where's Bo going to go? And he's going to Saskatchewan, and you had the Michael Balls of the world yelling at people. And I think Naylor was kind of in on that scuffle of where is he going? And then he's going to Hamilton, and we've got the billboards and everything. And it was, it was like Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets. I mean, we kind of talked about that on the preview show for the whole season. And I don't get this. This doesn't, what do you make of this to not only, I get maybe even the first half, but to go to, it was 6 minutes left and you're down. It was 2 scores, right? When he finally came in.
Yeah, I think that, I was one of those people that said start Matthew Schultz for the game because I do think he was the best quarterback option for the Ticats this season. Definitely better than what Bo had shown this season. But at the end of the day, Schultz was not playing a very good game at all. So many passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. We'll get into it more when we talk about the game specifically, but Schultz just did not have a good first half. And I thought that immediately starting the second half, Bo was going to be put in there. But like you said, malpractice, not putting your highest paid player on the field in that situation, because it becomes indefensible because you made this move in the offseason to, not just sign this guy, but trade for his rights months ahead of time and, bring him in as this big off-season splash that you sold these season ticket holders on. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you didn't even play him in the most important game of the season. And for Bo Levi, I understand his frustration because this very well could be his last game in the CFL. I mean, who's really bringing Bo Levi Mitchell in as a backup quarterback next year, even if he wants to do that? So, I mean, I understand his frustration with it because I was very frustrated watching the game on Saturday.
To me, it's kind of like the trade forward thing when we were kind of getting to that point in the season where even if like you're Chris Jones, you're Orlando, and like, well, I know better. We don't like you're getting to the point where you're gonna have to answer those questions later, right? Those receipts are coming in. Like I know the Ticats, right? Caretaker Bob kind of like the owns, but they got the whole conglomerate there, in terms of like the power structure. I'm sure that there are a couple of hands there, but to me, there would be major questions coming out today of like, what are we doing here? I mean, even if you didn't think that this was, a game-changing whatever situation at that point, like we've spent all this money and time and equity and all the media stories around when is he coming back and is he going to make it to the playoffs, and then to not even play him. That to me, the aesthetic of it more than anything, even if you don't think it's going to matter on the gameplay, I think would help solidify saving your job if that was in jeopardy, or saving just answering a lot of those difficult questions after the fact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, at least go down swinging with the guys that you've invested in, and that's where you put your resources. Don't go down swinging with Matthew Schultz or, we didn't get to see Taylor Powell, but don't go to those guys in that situation. Go to your, veteran quarterback that's won MOPs, won Grey Cups. You never know what's going to happen, but the way that they put him in with 6 minutes left in the game, they're down by 15 points. Never really had a shot to really get his footing in the game. And I definitely understand Bo's frustration as well as the fans.
Yeah, so just to round that out, I do potentially see that being Bo's last. I don't see anyone else going in at this point. Are you of a similar ilk here?
Yeah, I agree. I think that maybe if he has a kind of a mindset change, maybe not necessarily a mindset change, I can't really read his mind, but I can't see Bo Levi Mitchell with the pride he's had throughout his career and the confidence that he's played with, wanting to accept the backup job going into the season where he's, for sure going to be the backup, because I don't see any team bringing him in to compete for a starting job next season, even in Ottawa or some other team like that, or Edmonton or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, this could be it for Bo.
We're talking here, Kyle's, like I said, obviously Montreal fan. Montreal defense showed up today, a tough game. And then Jeff here saying Montreal the real wild card here. They have a chance to upset the Argos. Let's get into that a little bit here in terms of the game. I guess we'll go that one first, because we're talking about it. Normally we go in reverse chronological order here, but let's get in on this. Ticats 12-27 Montreal. If I can get this going here, what did you kind of general thoughts of the game, and then we can do a little more deep dive.
Well, not an overly surprising result. This is kind of what I expected, given that the Alouettes won all 3 games against the Ticats in the regular season, and that the Ticats offense couldn't really find a breakthrough against that Alouettes defense. And that's really the story here. The Alouettes really shut down the Ticats really from the opening snap. And I feel like that first drive for Hamilton was very promising, but then they go down and Keandre Smith fumbles. That's the second big fumble he's had in as many years against the Alouettes in a key situation. So, I think that really took a lot of wind out of the Ticats' sails. If they had gone down and punched it in the end zone on that first drive, we could be talking about a completely different game. But ultimately, the Alouettes defense kept the Ticats out of the end zone for yet another time this season. There was a game earlier this year, the first meeting, I believe, where it was 38-12, and similar story. The Ticats just continued to settle for field goals, could not get into the end zone, and really that's the problem in football. If you cannot get into the end zone, you're not going to win many games.
Yeah, this was a slow beginning. We had like a flash rain flood here. I was like up on my roof as the game was starting, and I'm like, okay, we got, at one point, whenever it came in, was able to settle down. Well, I just certainly picked up momentum. But yeah, I mean, Montreal, and like we said, Kyle's comments, really, the defense here really kind of putting their work in. I had the tweet from Evan that we were talking, former XFL Renegades champion here, Darnell Sankey, the big offseason move coming in there. How impressed were you? Would you credit the Alouettes defense or the lack of offense on Hamilton's, for the low scoring affair starting out at least?
I would credit the Alouettes defense for the most part because they've been a very consistent unit throughout the entire season. They've been a defensive-led team throughout most of the season. Their offense really doesn't do anything too flashy, but they're complementary. And I think, those offseason additions or midseason additions, I should say, of Darnell Sankey at the middle linebacker position. What do you have? 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception. He really showed up on the stat sheet in this one, made some big impact plays. And then Sean Lemon at the defensive end position, 2 sacks in this one, really being that closer that the Alouettes defense really needed, because I really didn't think they had that, premium edge rusher. But when they brought in Lemon, they really filled that role. And ultimately, at the end of the day, this defense is a story in the CFL. This season is the story of their season, I should say. Their secondary is really good as well. They completely took away Tim White in this game. 0 catches for Tim White in this game, who was the league's leading receiver this season. So, just great defensive game plan from the Alouettes.
Yeah, that's one of those things when they say that, because like I'm listening, I got it on, and we can the CFL Plus of it all, but I got it on my phone. I'm walking around, and they say that they, obviously like Tim White, which that surprised me in and of itself that he was kind of the leading receiver in the league, and then to have zero targets on that, it seems wild to me at that point. And like you said, the Sean Lemon thing, I know Mike Mitchell has commented in our group chat that. Like it was like the league didn't want Sean. It was just like, to be able to pick him up, that it wasn't like anyone wanted to re-sign him. A weird situation there. Why do you think there was that? I don't even know if stigma is the right word, but kind of, he's out to pasture, and then here he comes in and makes a huge effort.
Well, that's so weird with his career. He's had one of the strangest CFL careers I can remember, and the fact that he's never really settled down anywhere. I really thought the last couple of years in Calgary he had found a home, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think their whole philosophy really kept them from retaining him this offseason. It came back to bite the Stampeders as well, and that was to the benefit, obviously, of the Montreal Alouettes. And the pressure on the quarterback is just so important in these playoff games. I felt like Hamilton didn't generate nearly as much pressure on Cody Fajardo on the other side of the ball. So I think that was a big difference in this game, and obviously the turnovers.
Welcome, Evan, here. Hopefully everything went well getting back through traffic. Evan, we were talking, I had showed your tweet already. Darnell Sankey here standing out for the Montreal Alouettes defense. What impressed you the most with this game? I mean, to me, really dominant. I'm excited to see Montreal go in here to Toronto, and could be could be a real low scoring affair just if both of these defenses step up. But what did you make of the game?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, we can start obviously talking about Darnell Sankey, but not just Sankey. Sean Lemon is the other guy. I think really the entire Alouettes defense, I believe, won this game. But, obviously special shout out to Darnell Sankey and Sean Lemon. Great job by the Montreal personnel department adding those guys in the middle of the season. I mean, that was, I don't want to say it won them the game outright, but, 2 high impact players, some people had written them off. It's really incredible to me, to be honest, that they were able to get both Sankey and Lemon, considering that those were 2, pretty, I guess, highly respected free agents. But, Lemon went unsigned, and I think it's pretty clear he was unsigned for too long and should have been on a roster at the beginning of the season. And then, obviously, as I pointed out in my tweet, you've got Darnell Sankey, who, as much as we talk about XFL guys going to the NFL, Darnell Sankey was a guy who played with the Arlington Renegades, won the XFL championship this year, and then signed with Montreal, I believe, at the beginning of September, and has been there ever since. So you got to give him credit. He's playing 2 different seasons of football in 2 different countries. That's not easy to manage. It's honestly great that we can even see that, given the current state of, football or pro football, alternate football, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Sankey and Lemon definitely stood out in this game to me more than really anybody.
Yeah, really remarkable, I think. And depending, if they were to make it to the Grey Cup, and we'll get kind of our predictions here coming up, but truly remarkable. I just think that's a cool story. And I mean, we saw the McLeod of it all kind of go into the USFL last year. We'll see with the merged league and all that coming up and kind of how that goes in terms of timelines and everything. But I don't know. I like seeing these players kind of interact in both of that. Jason, from a little bit more of an outsider, just obviously you're not doing XFL day in and day out. Thought this transition here and kind of other players being able to do that, obviously coming into the season late like Darnell did, but timing works out. If you're done in April, I mean, you could transition into a CFL camp in the summer anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, it's way more plausible. Obviously, it's going to be a merged league, but with the way that USFL had their schedule, is much less likely for a player to join the CFL midway through the season than it is for an XFL player like Sankey to join the CFL through the season. But obviously, that's a moot point with the merged league coming up. But I think at the end of the day, I think it's pretty cool how players can bounce back and forth. I think that at the end of the day, I love the CFL, but I also love all types of football. And I think that I just want more opportunities for players to live out their dream. And I think Sankey's really got the best of both worlds the last year or so here in the CFL and the XFL.
We talked before you hopped on about Bo Levi kind of coming in late and all that. Thoughts on him? Is this the end of the road for Bo? Obviously upset in the comments, and if you're not playing your highest paid player, what did you make of that situation?
Well, it was a very strange decision, I believe, because last week when we were previewing this game, we talked about sort of, Hamilton's 2-quarterback system and how they were very likely to play Matt Schultz and Bo Levi Mitchell in this game, but they did so in the way that I didn't think was going to happen, and that was, first of all, they gave Schultz the start, which to some people was a bit controversial. To me personally, I understand, he ultimately, I think is, well, I don't have the numbers with me, but, he played a good amount this season, before his injury, and then Taylor Powell came in. Bo Levi, up until the end of the season here, had barely seen the field due to his injuries. So, to some people, it was a bit controversial that they started Schultz, but in my opinion, it took them way too long to get Bo Levi into that game. And I have a lot of respect for Matt Schultz and what he's done as a, sort of journeyman now in the CFL, really only between, Montreal and Hamilton, but he's been around, in a backup role for several seasons now, someone that I would call a friend and that I highly respect, but this wasn't his best day. Let's be honest. He was not, seeing the field as well. And, Bo Levi, the fact that he didn't come in until, I think it must have been less than
6 minutes
halfway
left,
through the fourth, less than, or more than halfway, through the fourth quarter. That's on Steinauer, that's on Orlando Steinauer. And, he was questioned about that. I think one of the TSN guys, asked him, at halftime when they came out, for the third quarter, would there be a change at quarterback? And he just said, oh, well, we'll see, but, the fact that they didn't even bother putting Bo in to some degree before halftime is kind of its own thing. And it was a very puzzling decision. And it was even more, well, maybe not surprising, but you could definitely tell that Bo Levi was not happy about that decision when he was interviewed after the game and came out saying that, he doesn't anticipate seeing himself, being there in the future despite his love for the team. And, obviously this season didn't go as planned, but it was very questionable in my opinion. Again, going into that game, the idea of playing 2 quarterbacks and having Schultz kind of be your guy that leads it out, that I understand. But given Schultz's struggles early on and the fact that Montreal's defense was able to establish themselves, for them to not, make a change and put Bo Levi in, who, to be honest, again, not the way we thought the season would go for him, but somebody who has shown a lot of promise here, in these last couple games and has shown us, that he can still, maybe be a starter in this league. The fact that they didn't make that change, that goes on coaching, and that's going to be a decision that I think affects the team for a long time when you lose a game like that.
Hey, Jason, at this point, and I want to transition here to kind of the Alouettes going into Toronto, but as a Ticats fan, it come down the last couple of years, right? You're in the Grey Cup, you lose, and there was all that stuff, and then the last year and kind of be on the outside. Like, I don't know. How do you view this now? Is there enough here to salvage? Bo's not coming back. Do you ride with Schultz? Like, is Steinauer there? Do you blow up? How would you like to see them move it forward?
Well, they're kind of in no man's land. It really feels like it. I feel like I said, last year, they kind of just blamed it all on the players. They're like, it was a disappointing season. We went 8-10. Let's change a bunch of the players. I think they flipped over at least half of their starters on both sides of the ball, and they hoped that would make the difference. And ultimately, it was the same result this season. And I don't know what they do going forward. I don't think anybody on the roster at the quarterback position is necessarily the answer. Maybe Taylor Powell if he gets a little bit more seasoning, but I don't think you trust that going into next year with him being your number one quarterback. So, I mean, maybe they look around the league. I think that maybe Drew Brown in Winnipeg is a guy they look to bring in. I remember years ago, I was surprised when the Ticats brought in Zach Collaros from the Toronto Argonauts, who was little known backup who played pretty well in limited action there. So maybe they bring in Drew Brown or somebody else from around the league. Maybe they bring back Dane Evans. I think that bridge is probably burned. But I think at the end of the day, they have to make a change yet again at the quarterback position. Yeah, like I said, I don't see Bo being back. I don't think Matthew Schultz is an answer at any capacity as a starting quarterback. So, I mean, yeah, it's just back to the drawing board. And a lot of this points to the head coaching position. I think that Orlando Steinauer, for as much success as he's had as a Ticats head coach, obviously Grey Cup's appearances in the first couple of years of his coaching tenure, I think that he's just really struggled to manage the quarterback position, even going back to his time when he had Mazzoli and Evans. So I think at the end of the day, they need to pick a guy, commit to one guy. But I'm losing faith in the whole coaching staff here in Hamilton.
Yeah, it feels like that was kind of the peak of all this, at least obviously in the time that we've covered the league. But you kind of had that strong 1A and 1B. And I remember even going into that Grey Cup, it's like, who's going to play or what's going to happen? A little bit more. We're now this, the Schultz and what I don't know. It feels like a lesser version of that. In terms of Montreal here going in, Evan, do you think that Montreal has a chance here? I mean, Toronto historic run here, and what is it, 16-2, and kind of all that stuff. What are your thoughts here, previewing going into the weekend?
Well, I'll say this: they look better than I expected. Playing against Hamilton, and you can argue maybe Hamilton, kind of dug their grave a bit too early. But on Montreal's side of the ball, like Williams stand back in this game, I think one thing that they did very effectively and that might be more difficult to do against Toronto, but it certainly worked for them here, was establishing the run game. You had Williams stand back, 18 carries for 95 yards. They didn't have to do a ton on offense. I mean, I'm still a bit concerned, obviously, about Cody Fajardo. Very respectable performance here, but, his one critical mistake was an interception in the red zone, and I think he's had a couple of those this year. That was at a point in the game where, had Hamilton's offense not stalled out, I guess you would say, that could have easily been a situation where, he throws that interception, Hamilton gains the momentum, they go and score, and the game is tied. But besides that, Montreal, do I think that they have a shot against Toronto? I don't know. I mean, from what I saw in this game, clearly their defense, maybe I haven't talked about them enough this year, but they had a great outing against Hamilton, and it's hard to say, well, obviously Toronto's offense is going to be much more of a juggernaut than Hamilton's offense, which has been, as much as I've, again, praised it this season under their change with Scott Milanovich, I feel like, I feel like it's still been pretty up and down at times. A lot of different quarterbacks, as Jason has pointed out. But, Montreal, I think if their defense, stays stout, they'll at least make the game competitive. I really don't think that they have a chance at winning, unfortunately, but maybe they prove me wrong. This, to be honest, is a team that, I mean, going into this Toronto game, if they win that game, if they even have a chance, that would prove a lot of people wrong, including myself, because let's be honest, while Montreal has defied the odds this season, a lot of people thought that they were going to be the worst team in the league. They still have a lot to prove, as much as I've talked about this defense being strong and this offense, throughout the year, having several different pieces, that have made this team, watchable. The fact that they haven't beaten Toronto or BC or Winnipeg, that's incredibly alarming, and great, you get a playoff win, first year under Jason Moss and Cody Fajardo. Even if they do lose that game in Toronto, I feel like you walk away from this season, feeling good about yourself and feeling good going into next year, knowing that you have a lot to build off of. But I just see Toronto is too strong, unfortunately, going into this one.
I am happy for the Alouettes, and I know that the TV announcers are talking a lot about it too. Obviously, we including like even James Letcher here, he had the one big one. He had at least one big run when I kind of had tuned it on, and I always get excited to kind of, is he going to make a break again? But we have a lot of Alouettes players on the show. They've been tremendously good for me to work with and to get players on. And so I obviously have a lot of, friends and good warm feelings towards the team. And this really could have been a dumpster fire this year coming in, and just everything Cody's gone through with Jason Moss and everything. And we talked about that with Daryl Davis on about Saskatchewan and their problems now. We're like, hey, Cody and Jason, like they were the scapegoats. It was, hey, that's the problem. And you get rid of them, and now they're excelling here. And obviously there's a lot of more moving parts and just, two individuals moving back and forth. But just excited for Cody, like Evan said, to get a playoff win. You're still playing meaningful football. You're going to be in the finals. I don't think, excuse me, I don't think anyone had them penciled in for that. And Jason, in terms of your expectations for the year, I mean, had to exceed anything for the Alouettes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had them, like I said a couple weeks ago on the show, that I had them last place in the CFL, like a lot of people did going into the season. I really didn't believe in the playmakers that they had. I thought their defense was, kind of middle of the road, but obviously that proved to be false. And I think that, they have to be proud of the season that they've had, especially considering they had new ownership as well. It really gives them something to build off of, regardless of what happens in Toronto on Saturday. But I think that it's been a very good season for the Alouettes, and they have to be proud of what they've done and exceeding a lot of people's expectations.
I mean, obviously there's no you don't get flowers for, at the end of the day, you want to win and make it all the way. There's no half measures, but it really could have been a nightmare, and I feel good for them. Toronto's really good. I don't know. I kind of worry there. Afraid that this could be a little bit of a blowout. Evan, do you at least see Montreal kind of keeping this close? Because the thing during this game, like you said, Cody's got the interception, and I kind of felt that way yesterday watching the Commanders play against the Patriots. Like we won the game, didn't play our best game, but I'm like, man, if the Patriots were even a remotely good team at all, like we would be having trouble right now. Like to me, it felt the same way. Like, yeah, Alouettes won. I mean, obviously doubled up the score, but if Hamilton even had a modicum of kind of any sort of momentum going, it maybe would have been a little bit closer. So what do you make here of at least the Alouettes keeping it close in Toronto?
Well, I think another big thing that I didn't talk about is, as much as I've praised, Montreal's defense, and again, they've got all these different offensive playmakers, which has contributed to their success this season. Cody Fajardo has a very, very difficult task ahead of him when it comes to that, Argos defense, both up front and in their secondary. I mean, you look at the amount of all-star talent that they have on that defense. I mean, Hamilton's defense, they have pieces that I like, but I mean, you're going, this is a whole nother level. I mean, what he faced against Hamilton, I really don't think, is comparable, and that it'll be interesting to see, just within a week, if he can handle or, manage that difference. So we'll see. Cody, look, Cody's been up and down. Cody is one of those quarterbacks where it always feels like he's got something to prove, and we know that in the past, I mean, there's a reason that he's here in Montreal, and that, his, I guess you could say his career has been, up and down, like I already said to this point. But there's a reason he's in Montreal. And to be honest, this year, I was ready to count him out pretty early. And he's, while he's proved me wrong, there's still Montreal is kind of there's just so many question marks with that team. And some of them were answered in this game against Hamilton. They really took advantage of that home playoff game, and that was great to see. It wasn't a fluke. They were able to go, of course, they had home field advantage, so that was a bit of a benefit, but they were able to win a playoff game, and a lot of people, would have never thought that we would have even been at this point. I mean, in terms of Cody specifically, like I said, he's proved me wrong this season for a majority of it, but I watching his game, just last week, and obviously a couple games, into the regular season, there's still some things that he needs to clean up, if he wants to, again, have a chance against, a defense of that caliber. And, that's going to be a new challenge for him. Now, fortunately, Toronto and Montreal have had some very entertaining matchups this season. I go back to, I think it was the game in July that was, that big back and forth battle. And obviously Toronto got the better of them, but, we'll see. Given that Toronto's had, a week off, you want to see how they're able to respond to that, as any team does in a situation where they have a bye week. So all of that's kind of interesting to follow. But to answer your question, like I said, I mean, after this playoff game, I feel a bit more comfortable about Montreal going into BMO and not, suffering a complete blowout at the hands of Chad Kelly.
I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm the biggest Cody Fajardo fan and 100% support. I'm just trying to figure out, like, if Montreal is constructed in a way where we got a pretty good defense, we have enough guys that can catch the ball. Like, we've seen what happened with BC when Vernon's out and Dane has kind of been up and down this year. It hasn't played kind of up to that level. Like, are the Alouettes winning because of Cody, Jason, or is it could you plug and play maybe another quarterback in there, or is Cody good enough to kind of elevate and raise them over?
I think that Cody Fajardo, like I was saying last week on the show, is kind of like that league average starting quarterback, that he doesn't really hinder the team around him, or he doesn't really raise the play of the players around him. And I think that at the end of the day, he's a guy that, skill set wise, not really the best deep ball thrower, doesn't really push the ball downfield. He didn't have to do that in this game. And I think that's going to be the big determining factor against Toronto, because I think the Alouettes are going to have to score 30 plus points in order to beat the Argos at BMO Field. And I've yet to see that Alouettes team this season. So I'm interested to see how that matchup plays out. I think that they have some playmakers on that side of the ball. Austin Mack has been excellent this season. One of my favorite players to watch in the CFL this season. Had a huge play in this one. Really the touchdown that really decided this game. So really interested to see how he plays in this one. And Toronto's had some weaknesses in the secondary this year. They have given up a lot of big plays. I think there was one game against Ottawa that they really, Ottawa was moving up and down the field with the passing game. So they've had some moments where they haven't looked the best in the secondary this year. It's going to be all about if Montreal can exploit that weakness and, keep up offensively with the Argos.
Evan, any other thoughts here on this game? We'll transition over to BC and all of that. I want to make sure you get any other thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just touch on Hamilton to wrap this up, because we've obviously been focused on Montreal since they won this game, and they did it in impressive fashion. But I was just really surprised, by Hamilton. Like I said, I thought they had a really good chance in this game, and they came out and to me, it was pretty clear after the first quarter that I don't want to say it was a lost cause, because they did keep it, somewhat close, but it just felt like every time they were, within reach, Montreal kept pulling away, and there was nothing, really that they could do about it. The only bright spot I'd say for Hamilton in this game, at least on offense, was James Butler, establishing the run with him, but that didn't really feel like it happened until later. He averaged 6.4 yards a carry on 13 touches, which is great. But man, I had so much hope, for this Hamilton team after what I've seen here in the past couple games to end the season. They finished so strong, and for them to come into Hamilton like that and really, to be honest, I mean, I hate to be critical like this, but to put up a rather forgettable performance, it's a shame. But again, you have to credit the opponent. And, now that I've watched that game and I had an opportunity to really see Montreal again in their, at full strength, I should say, I feel a bit better about them going to Toronto, because like I had said before, I thought Hamilton versus Toronto would have been the much more entertaining matchup. But to be honest, Montreal demonstrated that they, have enough to at least, make things interesting in another playoff game. So I'd say that's a win-win situation.
Jason, we were talking, what's the state of the Ticats? And it's just hard because, in the CFL, it's hard not to be a playoff team, kind of, right? You really got to be, Edmonton. And so this whole Hamilton made it to the playoffs. What do you want? We're going to do it. Yeah. To be third in the East and get knocked out in, like Evan said, a pretty forgettable game. It seems to be a low bar here to kind of go through and get that buy-in. So I'm just worried about that. And kind of obviously, Ticat fans moving forward. Do you have anything else on this game and we can move on?
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid that the Ticats management won't be open to making changes this offseason, because, we're a playoff team this year again. We've been in the playoffs 4 years with Orlando Steinauer as the head coach. So I'm afraid they're just not going to do anything. I mean, they're going to change the quarterback position, but outside of that, I'm kind of afraid that they're going to be complacent and not make the changes necessary to really get this team back into the conversation as one of the best teams in the league. So I'm very concerned for the Ticats heading into the offseason.
We talked last week, and you have the same standings, right, in terms of last year and this year, and that we have the same result, right, going into, both of these, right, going in again. And so you just wonder in that way, like, it's such an easy sell. Oh, we made it in. It's like the Commanders had a couple years, like, well, we're teetering on the playoff. You're like, you're either gonna, getting, to me, being a playoff team and getting knocked out the first round is not. There's nothing to celebrate about that. You want to have sustained success for that. Evan, anything else? We'll get on to the other one. All right. So we had this. And like I said, I was, I think I have this right here. I was at the bar watching this. Evan, we'll do our CFL Plus rant at the end of the show for anyone that's interested in that. We'll get to football first here. My fear, right? BC kind of whatever. BC took care of business, split up for it. It's still, the Donut Boys still giving up 30. And I saw, I'll gotta pull the tweet up here that Ryan Phillips had said, like, yeah, most of my guys played pretty good. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I kind of like that. Let's go first to Jason for this. BC took care of business. Score looks a little bit more misleading than the game felt. But what did you make of this game?
This game was all about Vernon Adams. Like, Vernon Adams was the best player in the CFL this weekend, and it really showed. I mean, this is one of the best quarterback performances I think we've seen since in the playoffs since the league came back from the canceled 2020 season. So I think that he was just lights out, and the Calgary defense had no answers for them. And the funny thing is, Calgary goes right down the field on the opening drive, scores the touchdown. And I'm like, Reed's getting really nervous right now. He's probably sweating right now. But
Evan texted me. I was walking the dog. I go, the game's been on for 3 minutes. I'm not even back from walking the dog yet.
Yeah, it's like crazy, like how this game started and then how quickly BC just flipped that and just they just never looked back. And I think the key play in this game was Calgary had the ball in their second possession because they forced a punt on the BC's first possession. Calgary had the ball, was driving into BC territory, and then Gary Peters, I believe, got the interception, and then BC just really didn't look back. They got the tying touchdown and then took the lead soon after. And Vernon Adams, just basically a flawless game from him, and Keon Atcher had a massive game as well.
Yeah, I was sitting there at the bar. I tweeted out, Keon, have a day. I mean, this was every time I was looking because we had the UW game on. They were playing, who were they playing? USC, Boohoo, Caleb Williams. Like, that is just ridiculous. I'm sorry. But I'm watching, it was like every time I'm looking at my phone, Keon's getting a 20, 30-yard reception. What was his stat line even? 190? Like, 9 receptions for 195. Truly remarkable. Evan, what did you make of this one? Because, you were texting me. I'm like, the game hasn't, I get my notification. The game started. 2 minutes later, I get a notification. Calgary is up 7-0.
Yeah, well, look, I predicted that BC would score over 40 points in this game, and they did that. Very interesting start. When Jake Mayer came out with a 3-play, 81-yard touchdown drive in what felt like about 30 seconds, I thought, whoa there, like, well, is this really is this what it's going to be, or is this just like a one-off thing? Because, he had the big completion to Bagleton, like on the first play. And it was interesting because they did that exact same thing pretty much. I forget if it was to Reggie Bagleton or to Trey Odoms-Dukes 2 weeks ago, and that pass was dropped. But, they came out of the gate with a big play, but this time they hit it. And then I think they had a run, and then they had the touchdown to Mark and Michelle, which went for over 30 yards. And I mean, way to make a statement, early, but unfortunately when you're going up against that juggernaut of an offense, and the big question, I think, going into this game, not that there were many questions for BC, but it really was Vernon Adams, whether or not he's going to come out in the playoffs and really perform as he has in the regular season. I think this was his first playoff game in quite a few years, going back to when he was in Montreal, obviously. But, I mean, man, he lit it up. Any doubts that we had about Vernon Adams, if there were any, which to me there weren't, but maybe to other people there were, those were silenced, within a couple minutes. Obviously Calgary got off that hard start. You're thinking like, okay, like, is this going to get interesting? But, Vernon kept his cool and they got rolling, man. And, of course, well, BC's defense, still giving up 30 points. I mean, you could argue that there's still some work that needs to be done there. And they had a couple guys that got banged up early. So that will be something to monitor, really, that entire unit, obviously, going into Winnipeg. I won't get too much into that right now. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about with that matchup because that's, to us, I think, one of the better games of the year, or it could be. But anyway, just sticking to this game, Keon Hatcher, nearly 22 yards per catch. I mean, the fact that he had, nearly 200 yards on less than 10 catches. I mean, if that doesn't summarize this offense and what they've been able to do opening up that passing game, I don't know. I don't know what is. Jordan Maksimic, I think, is the offensive coordinator there. And, what a great job he's done. As much as we've given credit to all the players this season, I think the coordinators and the coaches deserve, their credit as well. Because, going out there and, like that, just the absolute offensive clinic from this team every week. Now, the one thing still, and this has been a theme all season, but the one thing that still, is slightly of concern going into next week is the run game. Continues to, now look, when you're leading rusher, Vernon was efficient, 54 yards on 7 carries, had 3 rushing touchdowns, didn't even need Dom Davis for that short yardage stuff. But whenever your quarterback is the leading rusher in a game, that's a sign that, you probably haven't established things correctly. So again, and this is something that I've pointed out before, but I'll reiterate it here now that we're in the playoffs. BC, as much as it's fun to watch their offense and, they air it out and it's just, it's good football. It's fun, fast paced, high scoring stuff. When you're going up against a team, like Winnipeg in the conditions that they could be facing next week, establishing the run, I think, is something that would be very high on that list. But, even in games that didn't matter this season or games against, I guess you'd say, lesser opponents, any opportunity that they've had to establish that run game was not successful. And that's something that, I really worry about because, again, when Vernon slows down or has a setback, it seems to be harder for him to get back into the mind of things, right? So, typically in a situation like that, there's a mistake made, quarterback needs time to reset. You're going to lean on your run game and those guys to, kind of pound the rock and move things forward. But so far, again, Vernon was the leading rusher in this game. So, where do you go? It's kind of all on his shoulders, and it has been, for this season. I think that's what made this season so impressive for Vernon is it wasn't, look, obviously Winnipeg has a great offense, with Zach Collaros, but they could kind of fall back on Brady Oliveira, who, had a phenomenal season, not just by a Canadian rusher, but of any rusher, that we've seen in the CFL over the past couple seasons. So, that I think it really makes Vernon stand out. And that's why I've been, talking about him so much in a positive way this season. But, some of these flaws, defense giving up, random points late that they don't need to, no run game. Those are all things that they're going to have to get fixed quickly or adjust to quickly in the game against Winnipeg if they want to have a shot in that, or else despite this game being very good and Vernon establishing himself, that could all go away very quickly.
Yeah, you have 28 yards rushing. Inside here with myself. I was looking here. Next week's gonna be freezing. That's the Fahrenheit here. It's gonna be 33 degrees. What is that? Do the math. It's gonna be 1 degree Celsius here. You gotta get the, and especially when like you said, not only is Brady Oliveira having a standout season, like he's probably going to be the MOP. So it's like so you have no run game at all versus a run game that is probably going to win the MOP, for the first non-quarterback, for many years to do this in the Canadian Football League. Vernon, a tremendous game, a clean game. Love to see that. I had a comment here, James. Every time VA has a big game, he follows up with the bad game. I don't believe that at all. I don't think that's true. Jason, how concerning is the run game here for BC going into Winnipeg?
Well, I don't think it's suddenly going to turn around now. I don't think that suddenly they're going to find this great running game in Winnipeg on Saturday. So I think they're going to need Vernon Adams to play like he did this weekend again if they want any shot of beating Winnipeg next weekend. And we have seen that happen. We saw that in the first meeting against BC, against Winnipeg, where they went into Winnipeg and he had a great game. And the defense obviously was playing a lot better back then. But I think we have seen that from the BC Lions offense before, and Vernon Adams specifically. So I think they do have a shot, but I think with the running game, I don't expect them to suddenly find it. I think the best thing they can hope for is that they, really game plan and shut down Brady Oliveira and, hope that their defense can hold up passing game wise. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be do or die for their ride and die, I should say, with their passing game against Winnipeg.
To me, it just, and we'll see. I mean, the game hasn't happened yet, but it's just frustrating where none of this will be a surprise if they come out and they can't run and, Winnipeg shuts them down and, this has all been foretold. And so I don't know their, scheming or otherwise. Is that coaching? Like, I don't know. Can we figure this out? I never get this. Like, you see these teams, like, are the coaches, like, do they think it's better? Like, does Rick Campbell think like, oh, this is fine? I would love to be in the mindset of like, oh no, like we're fine. Like we're going to go in there. Not the media BS and talk in and okay, we're going to give it. Like, I would like, some real truth serum here of Campbell and kind of everyone else. And, just with McSimmons and kind of all of that, like what are you guys planning here? Do you not realize that this is going to be an issue? Evan, Winnipeg, like I said, really good here coming in. Anything else about that matchup in particular? Because we'll kind of talk a little Calgary here post-mortem as well.
Right. Well, I think, for BC to have a chance in this game against Winnipeg, and, now that I've had time to think about this, I've seen, obviously a lot from this team. I went to a game in person this year to watch them, which was against Calgary. So didn't think back then it was going to be a playoff preview, but CFL gets funny sometimes. But I think ultimately what BC is going to have to do, because I agree with Jason, as much as I say, well, they need to find the run game, they need to do this. Like, you've got 5 days. If it hasn't turned around all season, you're not going to get it in 5 days. But I mean, sometimes miracles happen, but no, realistically, it's not going to happen. So what I think BC needs to do in this game is they need to start hot. They need to do what Calgary did, to BC, what we saw, and we could talk about that a bit more here in a minute, but this weekend, just have just get Vernon out there. I mean, I don't know if they're going to get the ball first, right? You can't predict that, but let's say, they start with the ball. I mean, you just got to take some shots. I think, you just got to get Vernon out there early, get a 3-4 play scoring drive. And that's way easier said than done. And again, they're going to be doing that in some pretty cold weather. We know that, Winnipeg is a different beast, not just the team, but the environment. But I would really like to see them get out there and just we know what their strengths are. And I mean, the best thing that they can do is, at this point, it's not really about, fixing, the holes, because I think they've tried to do that this season and it just hasn't worked. Unfortunately, they've still been able to win games just because they have enough power. But at this point, you just have to go in there and, like we say, you got to go make a statement. You have to go and get that big scoring drive early, get Keon Hatcher involved, get Alex Hollins involved, just get everybody going early. And if you don't do that, then I think the writing's on the wall is a good saying.
They need to do it. I was looking back here. This is, what was this, week 3 or 4? If I can get this up here. When they went in before this, where they really shut them down and held them to field goals. Really take the crowd out of it. Because to me, that's the biggest thing. It's not only the elements, right? But it's the whole, and it's just everyone screaming. Yeah. And I remember watching the game last year, and Nathan's coming back, and he's been, he's still not 100%. And I'm just like, I felt so bad for all of that. You need to, like Evan said, score early, get the crowd out of it. Jason, Evan and I, on the BC team, train, you had texted me, you're pro BC now. What are you making here of their chances going into Winnipeg?
Well, they definitely have a shot because, this is a team, when they're playing their best, they can beat any team in the CFL. But I think at certain points, they get too high on themselves. I feel like we've seen that throughout the year where they've had a big victory. They play excellent like they did this week. And then the next week, they kind of show up a little bit flat against a team that is better prepared. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing how they start the game. Like you said, if they can get off to a lead, I think that would be huge in this one. And just to add on the running game aspect of things, I think that they did a good job in this game, even though they didn't run the ball well. They did a good job of getting the ball to Taquan Mazzell in the screen game and stuff like that, kind of substituting for the running game. So I think that could be huge. Kind of slowing down that Winnipeg pass rush will be huge because I think Winnipeg had 6 sacks the last time they played at BC. So I think that will be huge, slowing down Willie Jefferson and company over there. So I think BC has a shot. They have, so many playmakers on that side of the ball. I think Dominic Rhymes, who had a quiet game this week, is due for a big game next week. So, I think they have a lot more firepower left in them this season. So I think they have a shot. But at the end of the day, Winnipeg is going to be very tough to beat, a team with a championship pedigree.
Yeah, I like seeing, like you said, different kind of uses, because I know Mizell and they liked him because he was hurt earlier in the season. He missed a week or two, and then they brought him back, and they said, well, we like him because of his hands, and he's able to do more of that reception stuff. Not to keep bringing up Commanders, but similarly, Bieniemy is using a lot of our running backs in different ways now, where we're not just pounding in, like, let's get them in motion, let's get them, in the passing game that way, and kind of, like you said, do the same, give the same benefit, but maybe it doesn't look like a rushing whatever kind of thing on paper. I want to talk Calgary here, and then we'll do the kind of CFL stuff before we get out. Evan, I guess first to you, like, it's been not a great season. They've had 2 games, pretty good games back to back here, and Mayer looking at least halfway decent. What do you make here, kind of all said and done, for Calgary?
Well, look, I think this game could have been a lot worse for Calgary, and I'm honestly a bit surprised that they were able to. Obviously, they didn't win, but the fact that they were able to, well, I can't even really say competitive, but at least just put points on the board. This team, there's no doubt that they've had their struggles this year. And, Mayer, if you take away those 2 interceptions, Jake Mayer had one of his better games, you could argue, of the entire season here. And I think another thing, too, that Calgary really benefited from, was Kadeem Carey establishing their run game, 14 carries for 75 yards, taking a bit of that workload off of Mayer, even though he still threw for 300 yards. What are you going to do? Like, you just got to keep firing when you're going in against BC's offense. But ultimately, I don't think this was a bad game for Calgary. They didn't, going into the game, I didn't think they had much of a shot, but the fact that they were even able to pull within 11 and it got that high scoring, I'll give them credit for that. That team went through a lot this year. The fact that they're even in playoffs now, and it looked impossible that they were going to keep that streak alive. But by the way, separate note, but pretty sad about Jagarrett Davis' Grey Cup streak ending. I don't know if you guys talked about that before I got on, but yeah, that's a tough one. I was kind of banking on that in the back of my head, but anyway, Calgary. Yeah, look. They're still going to have some questions, going into this offseason. But to be honest, they came into the playoffs, when everybody said they wouldn't, and they had a respectable day. And, to be honest, are you really going to make significant changes after that? I don't think so. I still believe in Jake Mayer. And again, not the season that I expected from him at all, really. Yeah, he flashed some stuff, but I thought he was going to be playing at an all-star level, and, wasn't quite close to that. But do I think that, if he puts the time in, with the offseason program, then yes, I think he could get to that level still. Again, we've seen so many flashes from him this year. He just needs to limit some things and polish some things up that I thought might have already been done going into this season. But if he needs an extra year, look, like I said, football in general, not just the CFL, is a winning business. And, whether you like it or not, this team, as ugly as it was, again, they were in the playoffs. You can't slice that one way or another. So excited to see, what the offseason brings for this team. It's one of those situations. All the offseason situations, are very interesting. And, the one thing that sets the CFL apart from, some other pro football leagues, mainly the NFL, if you want to draw a direct comparison, is, like free agency, right? A lot of these guys are only going to teams for maybe a year. So you get a lot of turnover and a lot of change. So it's easy for teams to kind of swap players out if they want to. Look at Hamilton. Jason brought it up earlier. They were, they turned over half their roster just because you have so many guys on those shorter contracts. So, again, Calgary, it'll be interesting to see what they do with some of their pieces. I love what they already have, to be honest. I would hope, I guess, that they would keep a lot of those pieces, going into next year, because I think that they can win more than 6 games with the existing roster right now. But, again, one of those situations that'll be fun to follow, as there is for a lot of teams, not just the playoff teams.
Yeah, Jason, same to you here. We talked to Hamilton and all of that. I feel like you can't blow up Calgary, right? I feel like Jake took them to the playoffs here, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this whole season was a struggle for them. I think their injured list was absolutely huge. I think one injury that really cost them this season was the injury to Malik Henry. I think that with him and Bagleton, they have a legit 1-2 receiver combo, and Malik Henry is a guy that can stretch the field for them. But once they lost that element, this offense was very, very hard to watch. And I mean, I was also looking at their free agent list this morning that 3 Down posted. They have 38 free agents of the 50-something man roster. So they have an opportunity to change a lot of this roster if they want to this offseason. It'll be interesting to see who they decide to keep. But Calgary has been a team throughout the years that has been very reluctant to spend money in free agency and bring in players from other teams. And I'm very interested to see now that they've had a season like this, do they change their philosophy at all in that regard? I would bring in a legitimate backup quarterback because as much as we want to talk about how Jake Maier struggled this season, I think there's no team in the league that has a bigger drop-off between their number 1 and number 2 quarterback. Like, who even is the backup quarterback for the Calgary Stampeders? It's Tommy Stevens, but he wouldn't be getting a start if Jake Maier ever went down. But luckily that didn't happen for the Stampeders this season. We didn't have to watch whoever they had at backup quarterback this year. But I would bring in a legitimate backup quarterback. Maybe a Matthew Schultz type would be good for them. But at the end of the day, I would give Jake Maier another year. Development in this league at quarterback is rarely linear. I think when you look at the great quarterbacks in this league, you know, it takes time to really develop into those guys. And, you know, maybe if they move on from Jake Maier, this is another like Dane Evans situation where Calgary's not any better next year if they bring in another guy. So I think at the end of the day, I would ride with Jake Maier and make some tweaks to the roster.
Yeah, right. Maier was the only one that started every game this season, right? The
Yeah.
only starter for all that. So, yeah, we'll see. Should be excited. We'll start rounding down here before we get out. I want to make sure we talk. So this, and Evan can chime in as much as he wants to or not, but this is Reed here talking now. Thrice credentialed CFL reporter here coming in. CFL account still doesn't follow me on Twitter. That's okay. The CFL Plus experience, I would love anybody involved in the league office to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be with me. Have a conversation with any Americans at all that are watching, or any, not just American, but any non-Canadian watching your product on CFL Plus in the offseason, because it's truly a horrendous experience with no on demand. You have to do it live. And then this weekend, not only do, we don't get the ads, so you get like kind of this black and white Canadian football footage, and we get this trap, hip hop, whatever music. But then this weekend, they felt the need to air the Grey Cup Hamilton commercial, which is really cool. And like I showed it to Dorothy, and she's like, "Oh, that's it." I'm like, but they've played it every single commercial break, the entire, and spoiler alert, like the CFL has a lot of commercial breaks, right? And it kills me where if I'm watching CFL Plus, if I'm watching the playoffs on CFL Plus, I am not the target demographic for this anyway. I know what the Grey Cup is. I know it's going to Hamilton. If I'm watching the CFL playoffs on that, but it's such just a wasted opportunity and just a lazy, like, at least go back to the trap music, but just to have it be like a repetition by 1,000, just nice in my skull. But to me, there's a better use of whatever this platform is. There's easy ways to tweak it that would take a little bit of work, having the on-demand, be able to pull the games up that way, be able to, pause the game. I don't understand why we can't put the TSN broadcast up afterward and just be able to kind of scrub through it like you can on the TSN website in Canada. I understand there's rights involved with all that and ads and everything else, but very frustrating. Evan, do you have anything else to add?
I mean, it definitely needs some work, right? Now I'm very grateful. I mean, look, I could sit here and complain about, repetitive Grey Cup ads and a hip-hop song that's stuck in my head and the same gray footage or whatever. But to be honest, man, I'm just really happy that they even took the initiative to have that platform, in the first place, because, if you're trying to grow the game, especially amongst, maybe the American people, considering, how many American players they have up there, I'm not going to get into that debate, but I think it's really important to make it easily accessible. And they have done that, through CFL Plus, being able to just pull up a website. And obviously not all the games are available. Well, in the first half of the season, it's interesting because they had a lot more games on, CBS Sports with that new partnership, obviously switching over from ESPN. But you noticed that when the the college football season started, obviously that takes priority for CBS Sports, and a lot of those slots are filled. So really every game, it feels like for the past, or the last third of the season, I feel like was on CFL Plus, and a lot more people were probably using it. So it definitely needs some work. I didn't mind all the, little things too much. I don't really pay attention to that. I don't worry as much about on demand like maybe you do, Reed. It's not as big of a deal for me. Like if I know the game's on, I'm just going to set aside the time for the game, and I'm not really somebody to go back and rewatch too much unless it's highlights. But I think the one thing that I'd really like to see him do, obviously we're sitting here talking about, ad space and repetitiveness. I think, with that time in between, what would be a commercial break on the TSN broadcast, but obviously CFL Plus, it's just that same song playing over and over again. I think it would be really cool to see, and I brought this up in our chat, but, just the CFL, they have some great content creators. They've done some cool things, with video production and, following player stories. And it's become, some of the stuff they're doing there is very professional. You could argue that it's better quality than, some of the, leagues like the other pro leagues, XFL, USFL here in the United States. And I'm not going to make this a big media war about who has the better YouTube account. But my point being, it would be really cool to see, maybe they kind of throw in some clips about, certain players or some things from their YouTube. Maybe you could, advertise, if you think that CFL Plus, that's a U.S. and international audience, so obviously you're not going to be advertising hey, this is going to be at the game on Sunday, because that's not really your projected audience. But maybe if you were saying hey, here's what you should look for the game next week. Obviously it's not a broadcast from a specific team, so don't know how you work around that. Maybe you just kind of get a general CFL person to break down the games or whatever. But there's a lot that you can do there. There's certainly a lot more than listening to the same soundtrack over and over again that's been, ingrained into my head, throughout the season. So, we'll see. Do I expect that to happen? I don't know. Are they really willing to put that much time into the CFL Plus product, which is really just a couple games, here and there that are available to watch, and there's not many futures. I don't know. The fact that the games are there already, at least to me, kind of feels like enough, and maybe to them feels like enough also. But, again, there's a lot you could work with there, and, hopefully they make an attempt to do something with it.
Yeah, my last thing is just, it's clear to me, that no one in the CFL office uses CFL Plus at all to access any of this, which is fine. But so, you come out and you say words, and, I had Randy on the show, and this is a great service. And it's I can tell that you're not using this because, little things that would change and make the user experience better. But it also says to me there's probably not a lot of people accessing this, because I have to imagine they have access to the analytics involved in this and kind of know, are we getting 5,000 people a week? I don't know what the numbers are, but I have to imagine it's not a super high, even though it's free and even though it's easily accessed. Jason, any thoughts on this before we get out? I know this is a little bit of American complaining, but anything else?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that this, because it was the first year that they had CFL Plus there in the United States, I'm hopeful that they can add more features as the years go on here, and we'll see a much improved product next season. I would like to see them do something that you could actually subscribe to, and something that, even if you had to pay for it to get the games on demand and, get all these past games from previous seasons. I'd like to see that because almost every professional sports league kind of has a streaming service like that. I'd even like to see that up here in Canada, but like you said, rights issues kind of come into play with that. But yeah, I'm hopeful that the changes will be made in the future to CFL Plus.
There you go. As we say when we talk the XFL, USFL stuff, hope in one hand and you can poop in the other, and we'll see which one fills up first. So, no, but well, this was fun. We'll, like I said, depending on XFL, USFL stuff this week, this could be the preview show. Otherwise, we'll do our big recap next week, and then, like I said, a big show there on. It's going to be live on the Saturday before, so we'll be live the Saturday before, live on the 18th, and then you can enjoy the Grey Cup preview show. It usually spikes in on Sunday, but we'll record that. Probably going to be noon local time if we're going with the Anchor Bar. Otherwise, we'll figure out. But I'll post all that stuff. Evan, anything else from you? Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see everyone next week if you're subscribed, not already. But we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.